Is it a good idea to use broad match modifiers? What is the best way to use what the updates happen to the algorithm and why broad match modifiers are fantastic, and also sort of an issue that we've noticed in sponsored product ads where they don't always work, which is a little bit frustrating. And so essentially broad match modifiers have always been available inside of sponsored brand ads. Some people had still used them in sponsored product ads, but to be honest, historically, there really wasn't any reason to do that. And the reason being is that the traditional sponsored product ads used to function essentially the same way that modified broad match works. So I know some people who had tested it and I'm like, why are you testing? It's like the same thing. It doesn't really make a difference. So what is a modified broad match? Maybe we should start with that for the listeners. So a modified broad match is putting a little plus symbol in front of an individual root word that you want to ensure is going to appear inside of the triggered search. Now, what might that look like? So running shoes, right? If I put a plus sign in front of shoes, then the algorithm would have to make sure that running and shoes are contained in whatever search is triggered. Now, for sponsored brand ads, broad match historically has always triggered what's called like related searches. Running shoes might trigger the search term sneakers. Like, is there kind of overlap there? Kind of, but it's not. That sneakers may not perform as well. And so, to be honest, we used to just not use regular broad match inside of sponsored brand ads. We would only ever use mostly exact and phrase match, and then sometimes we would use modified broad match if we wanted to like broaden our reach. It's a little bit different in sponsored brand ads because you have the creatives attached, and oftentimes you'll have creatives that are very specific to specific search pages, and that's why we don't really like to go super broad with those ad types with creatives. We like to make sure that our creatives are hitting the right audience, but that's the sidebar. And then as far as the broad match inside a sponsored product ad, so again, this is the way that traditionally sponsored products had always worked with broad match, is that it always had to contain those individual root words, and it could swap the order of them. It could put words in between or in front or behind, but it had to contain those root words. Well, Amazon did an update to their algorithm. They didn't tell everybody. It was the most horrible way to roll out this. All of a sudden we noticed that like all of these crazy things were happening inside of our search term reports. We're like, all of these searches that should not be triggering are triggering. What do we do about this? What's going on? And everyone was asking the ad rips, and we were reaching out to our contacts and everyone in the industry is like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden Amazon never got back to anybody. By the way, out of everyone in my circle reached out to in terms of like internal Amazon people, none of us ever got an answer. However, what happened is Amazon just quietly updated their documentation on their website. To be honest, it was a little bit crazy. So now if you go into their documentation, actually I have this bookmarked because this is the only place that I've noticed that they actually will update these things, which is like bizarre to me. But if you go in here into their match types and targeting, actually this is new. This is really interesting, this little tag here. But you can look at their manual match types. And so now if you look at broad match, so it says this match types offered your broad exposure to customer search queries. A shopper search query can contain terms in any order. And then also the context of the advertised products. So the keyword itself may not be contained in the customer shopping query. For example, the keyword sneakers may match customer queries such as canvas sneakers, or basketball shoes, or athletic shoes. Notice how or cleats. Can you imagine if you're advertising on sneakers? Like cleats are a completely different thing. This is literally in their examples, what they're saying like, hey, this can trigger. So here's the tip. It says for sponsored brand campaigns, and this will get in sponsored brand campaigns and broad match modifiers to indicate the words that must appear in the customer search queries. So you add a plus symbol before each of the words that you want to appear in the search. So for example, if you use plus kid shoes, then the ad may match for kid sneakers. So it's again, you can see that kids needs to be in the search. Now, here's the thing. So because this has changed both in the sponsored brand ads, which again, it was always the case, and then it also changed to include, sort of these related keywords that, to be honest, are oftentimes you look at the search terms, you're like, this is not related at all. Why are you wasting my money, Amazon? It was also included in your sponsored product ads. But notice here, it says tip in sponsored brand campaigns. So I would recommend, if you are going to run broad match, it does make sense to use broad match modifiers if you want to be very specific with what you are advertising on. However, what we've observed and what you can kind of infer given Amazon's documentation here is that we've only ever seen broad match modifiers work 100% of the time when they're in sponsored brand campaigns. We've seen quite a few search terms, even with modified broad match and sponsored product campaigns, where that plus symbol, it doesn't always work. So what I would say, should you use broad match modifiers? Yes. I try to give a lot of context on this segment. So hopefully that more than answered your question, Keith. Should you use them? Yes. What is the best way to use it when you want to be specific, but just be aware that sponsored product ads doesn't always work all the time. And so what do you do about this? 100%, especially now with the way their algorithm is working, you really, really, really need to make sure that you are keeping up with your negative keywords.